I was just looking it up for something. All right, I'll open up the quiz now. I guess might as well. Drill with version. Someday, once you learn Python, you can graduate to something more. Yeah, so I went with Grog with Gerjoy because of the pirate theme from September. Why? Okay, I actually knew that one but forgot. That's a good one. We'll explain it in 190. Yeah, yeah. Okay. When we will get the Gamify assignment back? In the past, it's on Gradescope actually. Okay, hi everyone. There's a quiz, and you can do it. It's now. Does someone not see the quiz? Is it there? Okay. Yes. No. Yes. Okay. Cool. So before and I suppose during as well. So so there is extensive weekend plans. I know you guys have a lot planned as well, but come Monday 11 o'clock, you can dispose of all the nonsense and focus on the things that matter. So so online exercise 2, so that's worth 0.5% of the course grade. That's on there. You can submit on grade. So this is so don't take a picture. Go on Piazza. There is a link there. You can take a picture as well. So the link is on Piazza. There's instructions there. You submit on Gradescope, same as exercise 1. It's 15 questions. They're supposed to be good for preparing for the midterm. One issue that we often have is go on Piazza, don't take a picture. There's other important stuff on Piazza. So the exercise is individual, like exercise 1, and the reason is that we sometimes have issues around some people who kind of like work with a partner here and there, and then they never actually got around to writing code on their own. And that's obviously on the midterm, you're on your own. So it's really important that you practice a little bit. So that's why we're kind of forcing you to do it. It's not supposed to be too onerous. So we're going to have office hour sessions. I believe those are not, so Saturday 11 a.m. I think is like 1 hour after Katie's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. session, I guess. And then we also have Saturday 7 p.m. And then Sunday 4:30. So Saturday 7 p.m. I will go through the online exercises as much as possible. If you're stuck, I don't care. I can give out the solutions. ChatGPT also has them, to be honest. On the morning of the Sunday, I'm going to be running the half marathon is maybe too ambitious. I will start the Toronto Waterfront half marathon. We'll see how it goes. If there is live tracking, I shall post it on Piazza and Discord in case you want to watch me suffer. Okay. Anyway, quiz. There's a quiz. Hello, there's a quiz on Quarkus. Please go and do the quiz on Quarkus, or at least look at it. I'll discuss the solution in 1 minute. Hello, there's a quiz. All right, so let's look at the question. If you haven't done the survey, then please do. Your feedback is important to us. So I've looked at it a little bit, but we'll address it maybe more next week once I've had time to read all the comments and not just look at the graph. Thank you to the people who responded. So question number 2, do question number 2 or follow along with me, is what is the output of the following? So what's going on here? So we are over here, and that's this guy. So this is just saying x is equal to 42. Oops. Misclick. So this is saying x is equal to 42. So now x is 42. I actually am not using x. That is fine. So I'm now saying s is this. So s is now print, and then if I were to run this, that would print 42, but I haven't run it yet. When I say print s, what I'm doing is I'm just printing this guy. So if I say print the guy in quotes, well, it basically removes the quotes in a way, right? In philosophy of language, this, by the way, is sometimes called disquotation, a disquotation operator, not in this course. So here I'm saying print exec s. So exec, if you remember from last time, takes a string. So for example, a string like this, and it treats it as if it were Python code. So it just runs it. So that means that running this is 42, right? Because it executes the instruction print quote 42 quote close parentheses. Now here what I'm doing is I'm saying print that. So what does that mean? It means that this is going to run. The output is going to be 42 because if you run exec s, that prints 42. But then I'm also printing the return value of that. So the return value of that is just none because exec has a job. The job is to run whatever input you have. And then it doesn't return anything, or rather it returns none, which means that when you say print exec anything, if it runs, it'll just print none, as well as 42. So on the whole, what it prints is print 42, and then 42 without the quotes, and then none. That's the result of the fact that exec prints 42, and then it also returns none, which print then prints. Does that make sense? Questions? Who's not with me? All right. So the answer would be C. Print 42, 42, none. I tried to make it so that it's not confusing and so that the none is like not really a thing because there's only one print 42 and then 42. All right. Cool. So I wanted to briefly point something out, which is that if you want to, for example, watch the live stream and then just like copy some of the code there live, you actually can, because you can transcribe any code that you want with ChatGPT, at least the pro version. So if you just say, so on different computers, screenshots are going to be different, but I think everyone can take a screenshot. If you paste it into ChatGPT, so this is live, ChatGPT could say anything, but so I just say transcribe and I just paste. And it'll just tell you. And without even having to ask, you get an explanation, which some days might be better than me. When we get to about the middle of 190, we'll, yeah, that is correct. So ChatGPT got the point on the quiz. So when we get to about 190, about halfway through the semester, ChatGPT is going to stop being able to do, some of the things in 180 it also cannot do. Of course, that's assuming that ChatGPT doesn't become better during the semester, which it has been doing. So our goal here is to outpace ChatGPT so that you have marketable skills. So okay. All right. Hello. Okay. All right. And you can do that with screenshots from YouTube as well. So if you want to transcribe an example from lecture, for example, that is the way to do it. You can just hit pause, take a screenshot from YouTube. That is going to do it. All right. So I want to go back to all passwords. So the reason this came up is because, I didn't, so like my battery ran out and I didn't save. So I wanted to get my code back from YouTube and I just got it. Just took a screenshot of YouTube and there it is. And I asked for an explanation. It was a little bit verbose, but a pretty good explanation. So to remind you, if you don't have ChatGPT, or if you don't go to lecture or whatever, so what this code does is print all the strings over this alphabet, over alphabet ABC, of a particular length. So here specifically we said of length 12. So here is what happens when you construct the code here. So I'll first run it and then we'll talk about it. So that creates a string that they then print that looks like this, right? So that's the goal. The way we do it is we construct a string that really, if you look at it, hang on, looks like this, right? So it's like 4 car0 and alphabet, and then new line, and then space. So this space over here is the space that you need over here. And then 4 car1 in alphabet, new line, and then 2 spaces, 4 car2 in alphabet, then new line, and then 3 spaces, and so on. Does that make sense? The way we construct it is by saying, repeat 12 times, add I spaces. So first add 0 spaces, add 1 space, add 2 spaces, and so on. And then following the space, add this F string, which is 4 car, and then substitute in the I in alphabet. And that's the line, add the line to the code. So that construct this. Yes. Need to like put 4 spaces? No. So the question was, do I not need 4 spaces? And the answer is no, it can be any kind of indentation. So the standard practice in Python is, yes, as you say, these days at least, is yes, as you say, to use 4 spaces for the indentation, but really anything works. It would sometimes yell at you that the indentation is inconsistent, but if you're consistent, it won't even yell at you. Right? Yeah, other questions? So does this make sense? Does this not make sense? All right. So now what we need is to construct the other part of it, which is the print statement. So we want to print car0 plus car1 plus car2 plus car3 and so on. So that is another for loop, right? So what we do is we say, okay, so add I plus 1 spaces, because we added I spaces before the last 4, and then print, and then after the print, we add car0 plus, car1 plus, car2 plus, and so on. At the end, we add the empty string. So if I run this, that looks like this. The reason we added the empty string was that we had like car0 plus, car2 plus, and so on, and we ended with car11 plus. So you cannot say 1 plus, that's not a complete line, but you can say 1 plus 0, 1 plus 0. So that's the same trick. Make sense? So that's where we got last time. And then if you run this, then you get all passwords, in this case of length 12, over the alphabet ABC, meaning using the letter A or B or C. Cool? Yes.
So essentially, instead of writing everything for ourselves, we're using a for loop to construct a bunch of for loops.
Yeah, so we're using a for loop to construct a bunch of for loops, exactly. All right. So so I want to fix this code up a little bit while it's trying all the passwords there. So does anyone have a more elegant solution for this kind of thing so that they don't have to add the quotes at the end. Yeah.
If I less than 11 do that, else.
Yeah, you could do that. So you could say, you know, if it's the last one, then don't add the plus, right? You could also do something like, you know, for range 12 minus 1, and then add the last one, and that avoids having the for loop, right? So that might be, you know, slightly cleaner, I would say. So instead of saying this, add line and then F and then car at 11. So that might be a little bit nicer. Make sense? Questions about this? Who doesn't get it? Or who wants more? Okay. So what we've been doing before, okay, I'll stop it. It's not gonna, although like it's been making progress. It's at AB now, right? So what we were doing before was saying I'll add the empty string at the end. And the reason I added the empty string was because I said add car 11 plus. So add this segment, and then I was missing what comes after the plus. So the alternative way of doing it is to say, I want I to go up to 10 rather than up to 11, including 11. And then I'll just add car 11 manually. So here, and part of the reason I'm doing this example is I can just, instead of putting an I can put an 11. That's fine as well. Right? That's a value in the same way that that's a value. All right? Yeah.
Line plus equals car 11. Do you need a close bracket?
Do I need a close bracket? Yes, thank you. All right. Right. So this close bracket, the question was this was just this, and this would correspond to this parentheses. All right. Questions about this? All right. So let's kind of clean it up and make it a function so that I can, so right now I just like, you know, define the alphabet and I just put in 12. So that's not nice. This is sometimes referred to as a magic number. If you plug in a number that doesn't correspond to any value in particular, people kind of derogatorily refer to it as a magic number because you just plug it in. So I'll make a function. So what is the function going to be? So I'll say print all passwords. And then I'll give it the alphabet. And I'll give it the number of characters. And now I'll just move this code into the function. So the way I'll do it is I'll just highlight everything and press tab. That moves it inside the function. So code equals to empty is good. Alphabet equals ABC, don't need anymore. For I in range, so this would be num cars. And then this would be num cars minus 1. And here we're doing this. So this is line, this is really line equals, and we're doing code plus equals line. And then the last thing that we are doing is exact code. So now in a clean kind of way, we can say, you know, alphabet is whatever, like let's say X, Y, Z, and then num cars, let's do something modest like 4. And then we can say print all passwords, alphabets, numcars, unmatched, parentheses in line 5. Say what? So this is like inside exec code. So let me debug it. So I'll put a breakpoint here and I'll run it. And I'll just check what code is. And here, so that's the problem with magic numbers, right? So I forgot that this is not 11. This is now numcars minus 1. So I'll stop debugging, press this button. And so the parentheses is still unmatched. So breakpoint again, code again. So I'll print it. So here I'm saying 4, car 3, and alphabet. Connection is unstable. Your connection is unstable. So here the problem is I somehow left out the entire print thing. Oh, that's because that was plus equals rather than equals. So I'll try it again. This time I won't tempt fate and I'll print the code again before running it. Seems good. So this is just like fixing the typo I incorrectly fixed before. So that now looks good. I can verify right now whether it runs or not. Seems to run. I'll stop. I'll remove the breakpoint and I'll run it again. And there it is. Questions? Well, if you contact me, take a picture, upload to ChatGPT, ask it. It's kind of hook you up. Okay. Make sense? So that is the process that I generally recommend is, if there is, so first you develop a function by just writing code. You don't necessarily put it in a function because it's easier to write things just in the code pane without the function. You can run snippets of it. It's fine. Once you've developed it, at least that's the process I use. You put it in a function. And then, well, the debugging thing was improvised, as you might have guessed, but I think it was a good example of how that would go as well. All right, questions? All right, Friday afternoon after the calculus midterm, so, okay. Although, like you're going to spend your next 6 months being either just before the calculus midterm or just after the calculus midterm. So might as well start getting used to it. So, okay. So I'm going to do some lighter stuff for a bit. So I want to talk about slicing now. And that's technically the coding back problems that you're being asked for exercise 2. They were initially designed for Java rather than for Python. And Java does not have slicing. So arguably, you can try to do them without slicing, and that would also be good practice. However, kind of good for practicing. However, slicing makes a lot of those problems easier. So I'll talk to you about slicing as well. So the way it works is if you have a list or if you have a string, you can specify a sublist or a substring that you want to get, and you can get it. So here you can say, for example, L1 through 3. In the same way that for loops, it would go up to but not including 3. Here, it's going to go L at 1, L at 2, up to but not including L at 3. So what you'll get is the list that consists of the elements L1, L2, which would be, 6, 7. Similarly here, if you get the substring, so this would be the same as S at 1 plus S at 2. So that would be the string BC. Make sense? So nothing to it really. You're just saying I want a new list that's elements 1 through 3, not including 3. You can have steps. It's not kind of super useful, but might as well. And it does come up in a context that's a little bit common. So you can have L at, for example, 0 through 4. So this is 0 through 4, and then in steps of 2. So that's, again, similar to what we've seen with for loops, where we can move up in steps. So this would be L at 0 and then L at 2 because we're going in steps of 2, and then up to but not including 4. So 9 would not be included. Okay. You can do the same thing with strings. You can also go in negative steps. So if you go in negative steps, it's going to go from 4 and then down to 2. In this case, in steps of -1. Okay, so here it's going to go from L at 4, so from 9, and then down to 8, steps of -1. So you're going to index 3. And then down to 2, but not including 2. So it's just 9, 8, and not 7. Make sense? You can leave stuff out. So you can say from 4 down to whatever works if I'm going down in steps of -1. So that means down to the very beginning. And that would just give you, you know, L at 4, L at 3, L at 2, and so on down to L at 0. So something like that. You can leave out both the end and the beginning, in which case you get, how do you say it in English, the last thing? Anyone? So if I go like leave out the end, leave out the beginning, go in steps of -1. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So reverse the list. Reverse the list. Right? So this is saying go from the end because we're going in steps of -1 down to the beginning in steps of -1. What is it? Well, it's like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. The list, but in reverse. Yes. Yeah, so that's a great question. So the question is, what if you're saying L from 2 to 5 in steps of -1? And the answer is you'll get the empty list. So if the direction is not the direction that you mean, it's just going to refuse. So it's inferring the direction in which you want to go from the sign of the step. And then if you're saying go from whatever 5 to 9 in steps of -1, it's going to go, well, there's nothing there. Yes.
Your step size is bigger than your list size.
So the question is, what if your step size is bigger than your list size? And the answer is, that's fine. You'll just print the one element. Okay. And so again, like those things don't often come up actually. So I didn't want to clutter the slides with them. But the logic is it's going to try to do what you ask. But if there is no answer, it's just not going to give you anything. So meaning it's going to give you the empty list or the empty string if you're slicing a string. Yeah, there was a question there, or we're just pointing? I think you're pointing. Okay. Oh. All right. Since you're here, if you haven't done the quiz, email me. I'll let you do the quiz. Offer valid for the next 20 minutes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Have you heard me? Yeah, hi. If you haven't done the quiz, email me. I'll let you do the quiz. Okay. Because you're here. Okay, so I want to do slicing, but manually using for loops. So basically what I want to do is I want to have a function that says slice list, and I'm going to give it an L. I'm going to give it a start and end at the step. and I want to produce the result. So let's do that. So so you've seen this kind of stuff in the lab. So the basic idea here is to start with a result that's the empty list. And to your guys' questions, if it stays the empty list, that's what I'm going to return. And build it up using append. All right. So let's for now assume that step is positive. Then it's really nothing. So you're just going to say, for I in range from start to end in steps of step, result append LTI. And that's because slicing in Python is constructed in the same way that the for loop is constructed. Like it's all exactly the same rules. So should feel familiar, right? So this is saying start I at start initially, and then go up to but not including end in steps of step. And then every time append LTI to result. At the end, just return result. Right? So it's the same thing we saw before, just kind of translating slicing into making a for loop. Is that making sense? Questions? Yes.
Say, if I was negative, we just flip and start then.
Yeah, exactly. So we started by just assuming that it's negative. Now we have to kind of say, okay, like what if I is actually, what if step is actually negative? Well, then actually we don't need that, sorry. So for loop already does it for you, right? Sorry, got confused for a second. So if step is negative, it's also gonna go from start down to end.
You don't need to.
Don't need to, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, so that's kind of the same question as before. So the question, so if you do for I in range and then you do like 5, 8 minus 1, it's gonna run just fine. It's just not gonna print anything. In this, because if you're saying from 5 to 8 in steps of -1, that there's nothing between 5 and 8 in steps of -1 because you can't go from 5 down to 8. So in the same way, if you say, whatever, 7, 8, 9. So if you say like L from whatever 2 to 1, so that if you want, so like 1 to 2 in steps of -1, that's fine. That's not an error. It's just nothing. Okay. All right. So that is slicing. So I want to talk at least for a little bit about dictionaries. So that's a new thing. We will try to make it so that you can do a lot more of the midterm questions by the end of today. But there's really not a lot to it. So remember that we used, this is a construction that's called parallel lists in order to store users and the usernames and the corresponding passwords. So parallel lists is just the term for this technique where you have one list and you have another list, and then users at 0 corresponds to passwords at 0, and users at 1 corresponds to passwords at 1. So that works. We made it work, but it's not great because Python won't automatically verify, for example, if there's the same number of usernames and passwords. So that means that if the list's users and passwords are incorrect in that way, then Python is not going to tell you. It's just going to crash if you're, looking, if there is a users at 2, but there's not the passwords at 2, and you're trying to look it up. And also, it doesn't provide you any facilities. You have to write kind of everything from scratch. So Python dictionaries are basically addressing that. So if you think back to the example of usernames and passwords, that's basically all the dictionaries are, except it does stuff automatically for you. So dictionaries are defined like this. So you're saying coffee corresponds to Yip and milk corresponds to Benz. And then you can retrieve passwords at Yip and passwords at Benz. You can store new things. So you can say, so this is why I was like asking ChatGPT about drinks that start with G. And then I remembered that pirates drink grog. So that works out. Although I'm not a pirate, I'm a half marathoner. Perspective. So pirates can't do that. They have a wooden leg. Although I suppose you can do it now. So okay. So you can, after you say, I want passwords at Gerjoy to be, for example, grog, then to be enjoyed responsibly when you're 19, then you can say, what's passwords at Gerjoy? And the output would be grog. So let's try that. So I can now currently say passwords at Benz, and that's going to be milk. And then really it shouldn't be passwords. It should be like drinks or something, but whatever. Imagine that it's passwords. And then if I say this is grog, I can now look at what passwords is. So it's represented like this. And here you see that you should try it. So I've never actually tried grog. I don't know if they make those. So you can now say, okay, what's passwords at Gerjoy? And the answer is going to be this. You can also print it. That would be like that. Make sense? So, okay. Questions? So the terminology here is that stuff like Yip and Benz and Gerjoy is called that is mixed up. It's called keys. And then the things that correspond to that are called values. So this is just like you have elements in a list and indices in a list. You have keys in a dictionary that are the things on the left-hand side and values that are on the right-hand side. With me so far? So all we're doing is we're associating keys and values. Yes.
Password is not a list dictionary.
That's correct. Yeah, so that is how you define a dictionary. So here you see that it's defined using the curly brace, and then it's key, and then colon, and then value. Yeah.
Add a new value by saying like
yes. Yes. Yeah. So I've just done that. So unlike with lists where you use append, with dictionaries, you can do that. Yeah. Say again? No, so keys can be things that are not strings as well. They can, for example, be integers. There are things that keys do not get to be. We'll get to that later on. But they can be strings, they can be integers, they can be floats. They cannot be lists. Why? We'll get to that maybe on Monday. So multiple keys can be associated with equal values, but keys are unique. Why is that? So just thinking about the usernames, passwords example. Why is it that keys must be unique, but you can have multiple values with the same key? So it's the same as asking, why is it that multiple usernames can be associated with the same passwords, but usernames must be unique? Why is that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and like it just doesn't make sense otherwise, right? It's like if I have a username, then it must be that it's associated with a password, right? So in the same way, like if I say passwords advance, that must correspond to something, right? Does that make sense? So now that they said it, does it not make sense to anyone? All right. So like passwords at Grosjean, like I should have a password that must be something. It could be not necessarily a string. I can make it a list, right? So I can say something like passwords at Grosjean is like whatever, doesn't matter. And that's fine. So now passwords at Grosjean is just going to be this, right? So if I do say password for joy is grog, and now that I've had some, I want to change it to I know, okay, something like that. Okay, that's not enough letters to make it really funny, but you get the idea. So now passwords at Grosjean is just this instead of this. So in the same way that you can change the value of a variable, you can change the value of passwords at Grosjean. So that would be something like this. Make sense? So just a little bit of syntax. So if you define passwords like so, you can evaluate the value yip, for example, in passwords. And this would be true because this expression is true when the key is one of the keys in the dictionary, and it's false otherwise. Sorry, there's a little bit of chatter. Some of it is outside, which is fine, but yeah. Hey, guys, text. Okay. So yip and passwords would be true. So on the other hand, Wilson doesn't have a password there, right? So that would be false. Coffee and passwords would also be false. Why is that? Red shirt on the right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the coffee is not the key, it's a value. It happens to be a value, but it's not the key. So that's false. Yes. Well, so like using the n. So there's going to be another slide about the values, but n means is the key in the dictionary, not is the value in the dictionary. Okay. So there is a way to go through the dictionary in the same way that you can say for E in L, you can say for user, comma, password in passwords.items. And what that'll do is just put, the first user into user, the first password into password, and then the second user into user, and the second password into password. So that would just print, yip coffee. So just a space here because that's how print works. And then Ben's milk. Yeah. So important to note, of course, Python doesn't care that this is user, this is password. You can name those anything that you like. So any valid variable name would work. However, it's good practice to use meaningful variable names because then you know what's going. Okay, yeah.
Passwords die, that's like language of the dictionary.
No, so passwords.items, it's like a little bit an intricate construct of Python, which we're not going to go into. The closest analogy is like it's like a list of the values of the key value pairs, rather. Okay. So I can just show. So I can kind of show you this. So password.items it's like this thing. So it's not quite a list, but it's kind of like a list of key value pairs. You can convert it to a literal list like so. This is not officially in this lecture. So that's going to be a list of those kind of pairs. And then again, like not going to get into it, but it's kind of like a for loop over a list. Not quite, but yeah. So, okay. So that's like this. You can, to your question, query whether something is a value. So in here, grog is not one of the values because I didn't put that in there. Milk, however, is one of the values. Again, dot values, you could just treat it as a black box where if I want to know whether something is a value or not, this is how I do it. Make sense? So what I want to start doing at least is look up users by password. So eventually what I want to get is the list of all the users whose password is PWD. Right? So looking up values by keys, so looking up passwords by users is easy. You just say passwords at username, and that's the password. On the other hand, because multiple users can have the same password, Python does not have a built-in thing for looking up the user by the password. So I can say, well, I want, you know, I want the user, or I want the list of all the users. So, okay, so let's do a very simplified version of that. So return the first user. And that's just going to be, well, look through all the user password pairs. And if the password happens to be equal to PWD, return the user, right? So I'll say for user, comma. So here I got to use something that's not PWD in password.items. And now I'm just going to say if PWD is equal to PWD0, I found my user. That's it, right? So I go through all the user password pairs, and then if I find a match, return the user. Okay, we're done. Again, sessions tomorrow on Sunday, assuming I survive the half marathon. Yeah, I'll try to get to print the midterm beforehand so that you have a midterm in case, you know, in hospital or something. Okay, all right. I'll see you. Bye.